Hello everybody. So I've been playing a lot of chess games so far and I'm kind of still stuck around the same level. I feel like I'm definitely advancing, but at the same time I'm not advancing fast enough. So I'm trying to really understand my late game because I've been getting a lot of stalemates and draws lately. Something that I don't want to do anymore. Although I'm getting more wins than losses, maybe 5 wins to 1 loss, I'm still getting 2 draws. If I play 8 games, I'm getting like 5 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss. I want to eliminate those draws. I want to be more familiar with patterns and tactics. So I started studying the Endgame. I took several lessons, chess.com and a few other places, and I tried to get what some of the best top checkmates and if you're in this position, if you're in black, what is the best way to move into a checkmate? If you're in white, what's the best way to move into a checkmate? So I've compiled 6 that I've learned so far. I've learned a lot, but these are my top 6. So I kind of want to share those with you today because, of course, the more that I share, the better that I learn. So I'm trying to input it into my own head as well. The first one that I want to talk about is the back rank. So I don't know why it says the back tank. So let me go ahead and fix this. The back rank checkmate. The back rank is this whole back area right here. So the first thing that I kind of want to do is focus on checkmating black. So we're white and we're trying to trap white behind those rows of pawns. Because although that's a shield for him, that's also a wall that he cannot escape into. So he's basically stuck there. So as a back rank checkmate, from what I learned, we're just trying to find a way to create a pattern to remove all those defensive pieces and somehow trap the knight. Trap the king. There's so many variations of this, but this is one of the variations that I learned. So we're just gonna go ahead and push that, check that king. There's still a rook available, of course, so the rook's gonna go ahead and stand up. We're gonna go ahead and just go in there and straight check. Again, there's nowhere for it to escape, and we got our backup right here. And there's a ton of variations here. I just kind of wanted to cover one. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next one. The kiss of death mate. So with the kiss of death mate, we want to do dirty to the black's king by putting our queen right next to it, and the king doesn't have an ability to kill the queen because something else is protecting it. So it doesn't matter really where the king is, it just matters that we want to use our queen somehow, and the queen has to be backed up, and nothing else can kill any of these pieces. So we start off here, we're trying to attack black, we are white again, so we're going to go ahead and push our rook downward. The queen is already trying to make her own attack, so the queen kind of moves downward as well. We're ignoring that, so we're just going to go straight up into this area, kissing the knight, kissing the king basically, putting our faces together. The king can't really do anything because the rook is protecting it right here. So that is another move that we kind of just want to look for. Is there a way to get the queen up to the king? Is there a way to set up a defender piece as well? That's something that I want to start looking out for when I'm doing my endgame. So far I looked at the back rank chess mate, where the king is stuck up in one of its corners behind pawns. And this checkmate is when the queen can get up to the king being defended by another piece so it can't die. So the more I become familiar with these patterns, the more I'll see the patterns in the end game. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next one. The next one is the Damiano Mate. In this case, the Damiano Mate has an open file, which is over here. It's the H file, and then the pawn is going to be at G6. But if we're changing areas, the pawn can also be at B6. The pawn can also be at B3. The pawn can also be at G3. So it can be in any one of these 4 sections. But for now, we're just going to focus on this one area because this is where the king is at now. The king has 2 of these. It has a pawn and a bishop blocking it. And look, the pawn is also making sure that it can't really escape. So it's kind of stuck, but not really yet. So we want to play a little game where, number one, we can checkmate it with either the rook or the queen, most likely the queen in this case, and the pawn here is the actual protector and defender of whatever piece is being used to check. So we're just going to go ahead and put the rook right there. The king's going to easily take that rook, but we're not done because we're going to move our queen upwards. The king is going to retreat, but it doesn't really matter anymore. It's pretty much over. The pawn right here is super defending it. The king has nowhere else to go because, again, the king got it here and the queen got it here. So the Damiano effect is if we can somehow get our pawn to one of the G6, B6, G3, B3 boxes and get some type of beautiful piece up there, most likely the queen, and we can trap the queen. That's the Damiano Mate. So again, we got the back rank checkmate, the kiss of death checkmate, and the Damiano checkmate that uses the queen and the pawn. The next one here will be the Opera's Mate. The Opera's Mate is fun because we're using a rook and a bishop. So the king has to be trapped on one side of the back row, and the rook will checkmate by being protected by the bishop itself. So again, we're using bishops and rooks here. So let's take a quick look. The pawn is going to go ahead and make its move. Our queen is going to try to get some movement here with the king. The rook's going to take it. But look, now, how did that happen? The bishop is already here ready to go. So the king cannot go here, and the king can definitely not go here, obviously, because the rook is there. So everything is being protected in this white column, right, and the white file right here. And so all we got to do is find a way to get this black square right there. And since, let me go ahead and go backwards. And since we know that we want this black, hold on a second. We know that we want this black square because everything else is taken, and the king is trapped in this area because it's in its back row. We can just start sacrificing pieces because that's exactly essentially what we want to do, is clear up any defense, and the only defense is this bad boy right here, and then start playing that game. Queen comes in, tries to sacrifice, luring the rook in. The rook takes the bait. Bishop ain't gonna move because bishop wants to stay in that file, so the king can't go down, so the king can't go to the right. So rook takes it, the bishop is protecting the rook, the king can't escape, it's blocked by its own pawns, and that is the Opera's Mate. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Again, we have, just to reiterate, the back rank, which is kind of similar to the Opera's Mate. The back rank is using whatever it can to trap the king behind its pawns, but the opera, of course, uses its rook and bishop. The kiss of death is when the queen goes up to the king, kisses it, but the king can't do anything because it's protected by another piece. And the Damiano, which of course is the pawn at b3, g3, b6, or g6, and the queen comes down, trapping it. The other mate that I like to learn is the oldest checkmate in the world, the Arabian Mate. So it's where the knight and the rook takes the king at the corner. So the knight corners the king, and then the rook kisses the king. So let's just take a quick look here. Our piece moves, our white piece moves. Black is going to go on the offense here. It already automatically checks the king. The king can't do nothing except move out of the way because look right here, the rook already has a nice file that it's protecting it at. And then boom, we're checkmating. So basically this is, the rook is defending the square that the pawn will use to checkmate the king. So we know that in the future, we know that the knight can come here and the knight can eventually protect this square. There's no point in protecting this square. The king is too far from that. But the king is not too far from this square, and we know in the future we can bring the rook to this square and there's no other defenders. So the main goal here will be bring the knight in. We have the king has to escape or move its pieces, and it can't do it in this file, so it has to go to the right, and then the king automatically says, "Ha ha, gotcha," checkmated. So the Arabian mate using the knight and the rook. So all of these mate styles definitely use specific pieces so that it can trap, and the more we recognize this pattern, the more I recognize this pattern, I'll be able to better initiate my endgame. Again, I have a problem with stalemates. I don't want to have that problem anymore, so I'm really focusing on these endgames. A final endgame I want to talk about is not really an endgame, it's actually the beginning of a game. You know how we use Queen's Gambit? We put our bishop up there, we put our queen up there, we trap the king, and it's checkmate. Well, I saw on a video, Anna Cramling's video, where she was able to beat 2 players in a row, low-ranked players, but it's within my range. And it was pretty cool to remember. So I'm trying to keep that memory, keep that type of play and that progression in my head just in case it happens to me. So it's only when you start at black, but it's potentially doable if you start at white as well. So white goes first to e4, black goes to e4 after that. Of course, knight goes down to f3, I move to c3, and then bishop comes down, trying to do the Ruy Lopez. I ignore it for now because, hey, if the bishop takes knight, bishop is easily destroyed. So move the pawn up to d6. Bishop tries to do it anyways because they're very aggressive. The pawn takes the bishop. I ignore everything for now because I want to keep pressure on white. The pawn moves down, again, very aggressive, so I try to focus and pin down the knight so I can get the queen. The pawn takes that pawn. My pawn again takes e5, and then this is where the trap happens. If the queen decides to take the other queen, the rook can easily take this rook. And then if the knight comes down here, we'll have this whole file protected, and then this rook that will have been right here will move upwards, checkmating the king. So it's basically queen takes it, rook takes it. Now there's a path here to checkmate the king, and there's a path here if only the knight can get out of the way. But this player is really aggressive, this player is really greedy, so the player decides to take the knight, thinking that they can come over here and do a fork, but alas, it's too late. The bishop doesn't even have to move. The knight thinks that it got the bishop, but actually all the rook has to do is move upward. Checkmate. So just to look at that again, in kind of like one step at a time, the pawns try to take the center, the knights come out to play, the bishop comes down and tries to pin the knight, the pawn moves up, threaten the pawn, the bishop now has the knight pinned, then the bishop wants to take advantage, but at the same time, I have a pawn to defend. Another pawn comes down to try to attack and try to stay aggressive, trying to take that centerpiece. The bishop moves up, pinning the knight against the queen. The pawn tries to take most of the center. My pawn takes it back. The knight wants to keep control, thinking that he's going to also threaten the bishop until the queen comes down. The rook takes the queen. The knight comes down, thinking that he can threaten the bishop, but also thinking that he can fork, thinking that it's a good move. When there's only one move left, a checkmate. So this is kind of the stuff that I learned, and I'm trying to do as many lessons as I can in the endgame, so that I don't have to get in a situation where it's a stalemate again. I'm tired of draws. I want at least 70 to 80% to be wins. The rest can be either draws or losses, but I want to push that to 90% as I lift up my score. I want to get into the thousands by I'm hoping the end of the month. That might be a bit much, but I think if I do 8 to 9 games a day and just keep pushing forward and keep doing lessons, I think that I can make it. I just got to keep focused on the end game, but also not neglect my middle game and early game. So that is all for now. Thank you, everybody.